To this lecture tonight. It's nice to see such a good audience turning out on a balmy Wellington evening. I would like to extend a particular welcome to Your Excellencies, heads of mission and other dignitaries here tonight, and in particular to thank the EU delegation for co-hosting this event and more specifically hosting the social side of today's event. So please avail yourself of their kind offer with a drink after this evening's lecture. The annual lecture of the Institute is a flagship event whereby a prominent person in New Zealand's international affairs is invited to present to NZIIA members. And historically, the lecture has been delivered by senior ministers, dignitaries, not that senior ministers are not dignitaries, but and experts from New Zealand and overseas. Last year, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Right Honourable Winston Peters, spoke. Previous year, it was Anna Fifield from the Washington Post. We've had the Minister of Trade speaking, and of course ministers do speak in other forums as well, such as the Honourable Todd McClay in Auckland relatively recently. But tonight I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce the Honourable Judith Collins KC to deliver tonight's lecture. Judith Collins is the Attorney General and also the Minister of Defence, digitising government, the public service, responsible for the GCSB and the SAS, and Minister for Space. That's the space in between all those other responsibilities, I think. And Member of Parliament for Papakura and represented to represent Clevedon in 2002, and for a period, the Leader of the Opposition. I happen to know that Minister Collins has a long interest in international affairs, and I tell you why, because in 2009, she won't remember, but as Minister of Police, grilled us officials very closely on why we should deploy police to a Pacific country. And then in 2017, as we were just talking about, as Minister of Energy, she came to the OECD, an institution on which we draw too little, sometimes, I think, in terms of expertise, but again, demonstrating that strong interest in the international angle of her then responsibilities. But tonight, we've invited Minister Collins to speak as Minister of Defence, a portfolio she holds at a particularly important time, not only because of the capability plan announced on the 7th of April, a plan that outlines investments to cover the Defence Force over the next 15 years. And we look forward to hearing more about that shortly. And Minister, a particular thanks, because I know you haven't long been off a plane from the Philippines. You've got meetings coming up next week with Singapore defence officials. So we found a little créneau, as the French would say, a little gap, and persuaded you to come and speak. After the Minister has made her remarks, I understand that you're willing to take a few questions, and then after that, I will call on His Excellency Lawrence Meredith to propose a vote of thanks. So, without further ado, as they say, may I invite you to join me in welcoming Minister Collins. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you very much for that lovely introduction, James. I think it must have been the Ramsey effort that I must have been us questioning about. I always like to know where our people are going. Not long after that, we were sending people into Afghanistan, and I went to go and check on how they would be, which I have to say was one of the more interesting times of my life. So thank you to the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs for organising this event and for your efforts to foster New Zealand's understanding of international affairs. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak here today, and it's great to see so many people, but also so many of your many excellencies, all of you as well. As keen observers and practitioners of international relations, you are all very aware of the degree in which the global environment has changed, even in the last 2 years. We in New Zealand have enjoyed for a long time the benefits of a strategic environment in which we could focus heavily on growing our economy, seeking trading relationships, and pursuing our interests, safe in the knowledge that the stable post-war liberal international rules-based order provided the guardrails. And we believe in that order, and we will act to preserve it. But it is not enough on its own. We rely on our ally, Australia, our friends and our partners to help us to be more secure. And we have to, just as they rely on us for support. Few countries can do it alone, and we are no exception. We are no longer in a world, and I would argue that maybe we never were, where prosperity and security are mutually exclusive. There is no economic security without national security. And as Minister of Defence, I'm keenly aware that our Defence Force needs to be acknowledged for its core functions. It plays a vital role in contributing to national defence and also resilience, and helping to deliver whole of government security objectives. But we have a Defence Force with military capabilities for a reason. We choose to hold at readiness a credible force of highly trained and capable men and women who are prepared and ready to act with force if needed to defend our country. And unfortunately, 35 years of underinvestment, I have to say, the 3 years where that wasn't necessarily true, has allowed this capability to deteriorate. I was therefore very proud last month to launch with the Prime Minister, the Chief of the Defence Force, Secretary of Defence, our new Defence Capability Plan, or given the military's fondness for acronyms, the DCP. This plan sets out $12 billion of planned commitments over the next 4 years, including $9 billion of new spending, with a path to reaching 2% of GDP in the next 8 years. And the release of the DCP represents the culmination of several years of focused work by the defence agencies to ensure our defence policy settings and our defence capability investments best support New Zealand's interests in a changed and changing world through to 2040. As you can imagine, the content of the DCP was a subject of some intense discussions with my cabinet colleagues. We're all still speaking to each other. It's wonderful. And we know the critical importance of getting this right, of having a plan that is both appropriately ambitious and achievable and firmly focused on what is in New Zealand's best interests. So I'm proud of the DCP and I welcome the very positive reactions to it, both domestically and internationally. New Zealanders understand that our world has changed, and the highly skilled and professional personnel of the New Zealand Defence Force need to be ready to do what the New Zealand government and people ask of it, often at very short notice. Defence is not something that can be mothballed until we need it, because when the chips are down, you need a force that is ready and equipped to do whatever is asked of it. It needs to be able to do that actually immediately. That means it must be empowered and equipped appropriately. I've been particularly pleased to see the broad support for the DCP has received from across Parliament. National security is one area of public policy that benefits strongly from a bipartisan approach, and I welcome the support from a more capable Defence Force. I have been able to discuss the DCP with a number of my international counterparts, and I can tell you it has been received extremely positively by New Zealand's security partners. Our partners have welcomed our updated approach and our intention to invest more in New Zealand's defence capabilities. The first step to turning the DCP into action was taken on Sunday, when I announced the government is putting aside $2 billion plus to replace the Defence Force's ageing maritime helicopters Alongside that, we are investing 957 million over 4 years in Defence Force activities, personnel and estate in Budget 25. I'll have more to say on Budget Day on additional defence investment. So the increase in defence investment has generated quite a range of questions about elements of New Zealand's defence policy, both long-standing and newly introduced, that could usefully be explained in greater detail. And that is what I would like to do this evening. I will talk in particular to our assessment of New Zealand's strategic environment, our alliance with Australia, our approach to deterrence, the importance of combat capability and opportunities for innovation. The first line in the first chapter of the DCP sets the scene well for the policy settings that follow. Quote, New Zealand is facing its most challenging and dangerous strategic environment for decades. Security challenges that we are familiar with remain with us. At home and in our immediate region, these include ongoing risks of natural disasters and maritime security challenges of all kinds. For example, and some of these are getting worse. For example, we are seeing increasing use of the Pacific as a transshipment route for illegal drugs. And we're talking there mostly about methamphetamine, heroin, and cocaine. And for all our Pacific partners, in particular, climate change and its wide-ranging security impacts continue to represent the primary security concern. Increasingly, however, the defining character of our strategic environment is strategic competition. Globally, in the wider Indo-Pacific and in our immediate region, we are seeing some states increasingly acting in ways that undermine existing international rules and norms and seeking to reshape both regional orders and the global order as a whole. Recent events in our immediate region, including the PRC's task group operating in the Tasman Sea and last year's intercontinental ballistic missile test, have demonstrated that New Zealand's geographic location no longer shelters us from threats to the extent that it once did. Our region is of increasing strategic significance, and global challenges and tensions are having direct impacts on our security. And the wider Indo-Pacific contains a number of potential security flashpoints, be that cross-strait tensions, the Korean Peninsula, or competing claims in the South China Sea. Perhaps the most acute and still shocking example of the deteriorating strategic environment is Russia's ongoing illegal war against Ukraine. New Zealand remains fully committed to supporting Ukraine's self-defense and national resilience. The Prime Minister announced last month during his trip to the United Kingdom and Turkey that New Zealand is extending its military assistance in support of Ukraine's self-defense through to December 2026. New Zealand welcomes efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace and is following the negotiations on a potential ceasefire very closely. As a government, we need to ensure we are employing our full range of tools of statecraft to best effect and service of New Zealand's national interests. We're a small island nation that relies on trade for its economic growth. And as I have previously said, we cannot have economic security without national security. A compromised supply chain can lead to disruptions, financial losses, reputational damage, and compromised products or services. And our supply chains rely on the security of maritime, air, land, space, and cyber domains. And as Defence Minister, I need to ensure the Defence Force has the right capabilities, is using those capabilities to support peace and security, and is prepared for scenarios in which competition tips into confrontation and conflict. That is why the DCP has 3 new defence objectives. These aren't a radical shift in our policy. They provide a sharper focus. The first is to protect and promote New Zealand's security and that of our immediate region. New Zealand's security is indivisible from the strategic situation our region is facing. Defence plays a key part in ensuring the security, stability, and resilience of our immediate region, by deterring actions contrary to the security of New Zealand and our regional partners in helping sustain wider regional conditions favourable to New Zealand's security interests. An important part of this is delivering our defence and security constitutional responsibilities to the realm. Second is enhancing our alliance and other key security partnerships, which I'll expand on shortly. And third is to contribute to achieving our global interests, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. Defence will continue its pattern of operations in support of maritime security and the existing liberal international rules-based order. And we will work closely with our international security partners to promote collective security approaches in accordance with international law, and in particular, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, including freedom, or UNCLOS, including freedom of navigation and oversight. But Defence's activities are truly global as well, as demonstrated by the NZDF's ongoing support to Ukraine and operations in the Middle East. Just last month, the Royal New Zealand Navy deployed the frigate HMNZS Takaha to conduct anti-smuggling operations in the Indian Ocean as part of New Zealand-led Combined Task Force 150. The task force has already had very real impact, disrupting the trade of $600 million worth of illegal drugs so far, mostly heroin. Taken together, these three new objectives set the direction for defence as part of an all-of-government approach to promote and protect our national interests. But I want to expand specifically on our security partnerships. New Zealand has always valued the importance of collective security and supporting international mechanisms that enable collective action and support sovereign equality of states. This is reflected in the policy settings in the DCP. We have also always worked with others that share our values and our interests to shape the world as we would wish it to be, and to prepare together should the worst happen. Indeed, since becoming the Minister of Defence, I have taken every opportunity to meet with my international defence counterparts to demonstrate that New Zealand is internationally engaged and willing to step up to respond to new opportunities and emerging threats. But within that, we will always maintain our independent foreign policy, making our own decisions about what is in New Zealand's interest, just as other countries do. It's worth saying more about our relationship with our closest friend and only ally, Australia. For this government, it was essential that the DCP reinforce the importance we place on our alliance with Australia and the importance in our evolving strategic environment to speak directly about these issues. I've been in touch with my Australian Defence counterpart, Richard Marles, who is also their Deputy Prime Minister, to offer my congratulations. Minister Marles and I both look forward to continuing to work together on a range of issues, including our shared security. We have specifically referenced the ANZUS Treaty in the DCP, as it continues to underpin the strategic relationship between New Zealand and Australia and formalises the commitments that we have to each other as allies. It has done so since 1951. And the DCP does not represent any change in its interpretation. And as the Prime Minister stated, our nuclear-free policy has not and will not change. We are working to create an increasingly integrated ANZAC force, which means we will be better prepared, exercised and equipped to combine our defence forces to defend our shared interests. To enhance our interoperability, we have committed to removing tactical, technical and procedural information sharing barriers where they restrict our ability to operate as an integrated force. Of course, this government is also committed to maintaining and investing in a range of other security partnerships, including with our Pacific partners and our Five Eyes partners. As the Prime Minister has indicated, we are also focused on strengthening our relationships across Asia. Recently, we have signed a number of agreements with partner countries. These include the India-New Zealand Defence Cooperation Agreement, which is a milestone bilateral arrangement facilitating closer defence relations, including the establishment of regular bilateral defence engagements and opening new areas for collaboration, such as deploying and training together. I was in the Philippines last week to sign a Status of Visiting Forces Agreement, which sets out the legal conditions for military cooperation between our countries. And as part of the NATO Indo-Pacific 4 grouping, we're working with NATO and Indo-Pacific partners to uphold the international rules-based order and democratic values that are fundamental to our security and prosperity. We've also observed commentary on the much more explicit inclusion of and focus on deterrence in the DCP. Deterrence is a normal part of how states operate and what defence forces do. It really shouldn't be controversial that defence should be able to defend. At its core, it is actually about influencing behaviour or denying opportunities by making other actors aware of the risks and consequences of undertaking those unwanted activities. Deterrence can be delivered through various tools, but having a credible and capable military force is a key way of stating and deterring activities and behaviours that states don't want. As the DCP itself points out, deterrence is underpinned by having the necessary tools to act. In that respect, the DCP recognises the increasing importance of building greater lethality into the force to be able to achieve deterrent effects. It's also important here to be clear on what the purpose of a military is. And I referred earlier to the core functions of a defence force. Of course, modern militaries carry out a range of functions, but with the challenging world we now face, we need to reinforce the primary purpose of the military. There is no opting out from today's strategic realities. And that is why the DCP signals increased strike capabilities, which will increase our ability to use force if needed to protect our interests. And this will be achieved through the procurement of new missile systems, which will provide an ability to respond to hostile vessels at a greater range. Options for this include arming existing air and maritime platforms with missiles, such as the P-8A Poseidon fleet and the Anzac frigates, or options such as land-based strike. I'm very aware of the importance of innovation, new technologies in defence as well. So experience in Ukraine shows that conventional systems are still needed, but we've also seen the use of new technologies in new ways. Tanks and drones in the same battlefield are a reality. New technologies and innovations will help the NZIIA with intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance activities. In the short and medium term, defence will focus on uncrewed technology, including long-range uncrewed aerial vehicles to provide more persistent maritime surveillance. The DCP also describes uncrewed surface and subsurface vessels to help monitor and protect our exclusive economic zone and support our Pacific partners. There will also be a focus on strengthened cyber and information capabilities to protect the NZDF's networks and systems and provide defensive, cyber, electronic, and information warfare effects. A 2-yearly review cycle of this DCP will provide greater flexibility by adopting technologies earlier in their life cycle and by incorporating new but proven technologies. Defence is also exploring joint procurement opportunities with Australia where it makes sense to do so. A technology accelerator as part of the DCP will enable New Zealand's high technology sector to quickly develop advanced platforms and systems specifically focused on New Zealand's defence problems and the ability to deliver these rapidly. It would help transition technology from the prototype phase to service-ready capabilities that could be readily acquired by the NZDF, albeit at limited scale. We have an opportunity to partner in a much better way with industry, and particularly New Zealand industry. How we intend to do this will be set out in the defence industry strategy that will support implementation of the DCP. One area we see innovation scope to adapt is in the space industry. And as you have already been told, I'm also the Minister for Space. I find it very helpful. I keep agreeing with myself. Can be helpful around the cabinet table. I believe that here we have an opportunity to harness the incredible innovation across the New Zealand space industry to make contributions across all applications of space. The world's reliance on space technologies means that irresponsible behaviour in space has global impacts, and New Zealand has no protection from those effects. And guaranteeing access to satellite communications and other systems that rely on space is critical to a range of new and existing technologies and systems used by the New Zealand Defence Force. And part of supporting that access is ensuring we take broader action to support New Zealand's interests in the safe, secure, and responsible use of space. We are developing a new regulatory regime to ensure that operators of ground-based space infrastructure register their operations to deter foreign interference in New Zealand's space infrastructure. For the partners and allies, New Zealand's defence agencies and our innovative space industry can contribute to international efforts to preserve and protect freedom of access to space and all the space-based services we need to prosper. In conclusion, I believe this DCP represents change. It is a change to a more deliberate defence policy, and it is a significant change in the level of investment in our defence. It is a message to New Zealanders that we are prepared to invest in this activity and that we are able to invest in their security. It is a message to our partners and our ally that we will contribute what we need to. And it is a message to the New Zealand Defence Force that we believe in them and what they do. Change can be hard, and deciding to invest this amount of funding was difficult. We did not and won't ever take that decision lightly. But when the world around us is changing at such a pace, we also need to change our thinking and our approach. Not to do so would be irresponsible. And thank you for your time today. I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. I knew we were getting value and we had you speaking on two portfolios for the price of one tonight. So thank you very much. We have microphones coming round, so please put your hand up if you'd like to speak, but please also wait until somebody turns up with a microphone, and it would be helpful if you could identify yourself to the Minister. Question? Nobody got a question? Here we are. Suze Jessup, who's one of our board members, but is also the Executive Director of the Asian New Zealand Foundation.
Kia ora, Minister, thanks for a superb address. Could you reflect a little on how our relationship with France and the Pacific is changing, given we have the FONC in the Pacific, the French, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but that relationship too must be increasingly important to this environment that you're laying out.
Thank you for that question. So I could have mentioned, but I am now going to, that we are part of the South Pacific Defence Ministers meeting, and France is part of that as because the French Polynesia and it's part of France. Anyway, so yes, that relationship is changing too, and I think what is really clear is that like-minded countries are wanting to work closer together as much as possible, because we all know the world is changing. I mean, France gets to see it in Europe and gets to see it in the Pacific. It is not immune to understanding what's going on. And I think we are increasing wherever we can those relationships. But at the moment, we're not to the same stage as, say, we are with some of our other friends, but certainly they're an active member of the South Pacific Defence Ministers.
Professor Holbrook.
Thank you, Minister, for that comprehensive address. I'd just like to ask you a question about Canada. They are, of course, a Pacific nation. They're a member of Five Eyes. They've also recently shown that you can be critical of the current US administration and still get an invitation to the White House. So I wonder, what are our relationships with Canada, and are they likely to strengthen in the period ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Look, Canada's we're really good and close relationships with Canada across, obviously, part of the Five Eyes, but also in defence. And the Canadians, as you rightly say, are a Pacific nation. I'm not sure every state of Canada necessarily, or every province of Canada necessarily thinks of themselves as Pacific, but I'm advised by their High Commissioner who visited me yesterday that when I asked a similar question, that the British Columbia in particular is very focused on the Pacific. So it's good when countries remember that they're Pacific nations, and that what happens in the Pacific matters to them too. But we have a very good long-standing relationship with the Canadians, and they're really good people. I can say too, they're very effective spies too. And I say that in a very complimentary manner because I've seen some of their excellent tradecraft work, and they are outstanding. I say this because I get to see these things. It is a total compliment because they are just like us, actually. They also have a large neighbour. And just like us, no one ever thinks that anything bad's going to happen from us, but they are really good. They're highly capable people. And I'm told in defence too. I don't know who's going to be the new defence minister, but certainly the previous one, we got on very well, Bill Blair, a really nice guy. And they're absolutely increasing their defence spend as well.
Sorry, I can't see. Oh, Richard.
Minister, I'm Richard Jackson from the Wairarapa. We too worry about New Zealand's front line. The recent Chinese naval deployment around Australia, what sort of lessons did the New Zealand government take from that, please?
Well, I thought this is the Trans-Tasman, the task force that came down to the Tasman Sea. I thought we learnt probably quite a lot of lessons, none of which I could tell you. But I do think too is that we saw some very good work between Australia and New Zealand. So it was a very much a joint monitoring project going on. And I think the other thing that it certainly told the New Zealand public is that distance is nothing now. That we had a hugely capable task force sent down. It wasn't a huge task force, it was just hugely capable. That its weapons could put at risk parts of New Zealand as well as Australia. And it is important to understand that the world is different. So those New Zealanders who have been hoping that we could hide down the bottom of the world and no one ever notice us because no one knows who we are or where we are, or they were wrong, and maybe they were right once, but not now.
There's somebody behind Richard. Gentleman in the back there.
Thank you, Dr. Lau, member of the Institute. The Prime Ministers of Australia and Singapore said that the tariffs by President Trump are not of a friend. The US have abandoned allies militarily in Afghanistan, in Vietnam, and now in Ukraine. My question, Ms. Collins, should New Zealand forces be involved in and trust a Trumpian US in any future US instigated war in Asia because of hegemony? Thank you.
I haven't noticed the US doing any such thing, actually. I don't see them doing any such activity. I would say, though, that if you were to ask the Republic of Korea if they'd like the US and New Zealand forces and other forces to leave, I think they wouldn't like that. So I think we need to be a little bit less reactionary to some of the things that happen and understand that countries like New Zealand, Australia, you can see it in NATO, you can see it elsewhere. Everybody is stepping up and doing more themselves and working closer together. And that's why these relationships that we're building with the Philippines, which we already have with the Republic of Korea, with Japan, with Singapore, with Malaysia, these are long-standing relationships in many cases. They're very, very important. But I don't see any attempt at the moment of anybody doing anything in Asia.
Yes.
Hi, Judith. Thank you for your presentation. So I would like to ask a question. For these two gentlemen's question is that, do you think that the Five Eyes, is there any relationship between Five Eyes and those event, that is event that Chinese military didn't inform us and then have the cruise, the warship between around the strait? So I'm trying to understand the relationship between Five Eyes, because I know that New Zealand stay in the Five Eyes, and the other end, Chinese military, they didn't inform us when they decided to have the cruise. So do you think they have like relationship between them? Do you think that New Zealand should make better effort to improve the relationship between New Zealand and China? Thank you.
Well, Five Eyes is primarily an information sharing agreement. It is also utterly crucial to our cybersecurity. We're under constant attack every day, constantly from around the world, and we've called out some activities. So whether it's in our commercial businesses that are under attack, our infrastructure, our government agencies, even our parliament, even our parliamentary council office a couple of years ago, there is constant attack. It is also crucial for us in terms of any terrorism threat. And it's something that is a very long-standing relationship that is utterly valuable to us. Many countries in the world would like to be part of the Five Eyes or to have that information. In terms of ships and things, I don't think that they're at all related. We have a very close relationship with China, particularly in the economic stage, but also in science. And we have a respectful relationship where when we pass through various areas in international waters, we are very careful to make sure we follow the rules, just as China did when it came down to the Tasman Sea.
Over the side, gentleman there.
Good evening, Minister. Andy Cameron from the Institute here and consultant at large. Congratulations on getting the DCP through Cabinet and agreed. It sketches out quite a different role for parts of our defence, in particular in the cyber security space, that broader IT space. Are you worried about the ability to attract the right kind of people to take on those roles, as they are very different from what we would normally consider as sort of defence roles?
Not really, Andy. We've had some very good people working in defence. And of course, defence, the GCSB and the NZIIA are very closely aligned and have a lot to do with each other. And there seems to be quite in fact, the head of the GCSB is the former head of our Air Force. So it's amazing the connections in a small place like this. What I do know is that space and cyber is becoming increasingly used as a way to infiltrate, whether it's commercial deals, information on the government, information on Parliament, MPs being targeted. It is something that defence does need to be able to deal with, because particularly the space area of it. So you're going to see more connection between our space agency and defence. You're going to see more connections between all those. I think actually, I don't know that we'll have that much trouble recruiting. The thing is, our people are often very well trained, and they do become, unfortunately, extremely popular with the private sector. So, but we just have to keep training more.
Any other questions? Rob, Professor Rob Rebel from Victoria University.
Thanks. Yes, Rob Rebel from Victoria University and the NZIIA. Thank you very much, Minister, for that splendid address. We had the opportunity to meet when you visited Poland, and you met some Ukrainians at the time as well. And you're conscious of how much Poland spends on defence, and that relates to my question. Clearly, the Defence Capability Plan is a step change in our defence spending, and you obviously had to do a lot of budgetary juggling and around the cabinet table, including probably arguments with yourself as well in your various portfolios. But I wonder, given the challenges that you've outlined in your address, do you think what has been determined is enough?
Well, it's a really good question, because if we could have more, that would be great, but we'd have to be able to spend it properly. So any fool can go out and buy a whole lot of things, but you have to have the personnel. And as has been stated many times in the media, that Defence Force suffered appalling attrition rates, particularly in during the COVID times. So at one stage, I think the Army attrition was about 17.7%. So that tells you what the retention rate was, which was not much really. We're now got to a very even keel. So the Navy is at the lowest rate ever of attrition. They're now at 5.8%, the lowest rate ever recorded, I think, other than possibly through the Second World War. And the Army is now down to about, I think about 7.8 or something like that, and the Air Force are similar numbers. So we've actually knocked that one on the head. The problem there, though, is that the ones that people that we lost, a lot of them were people with 10 to 15 years experience. You know, you're very senior, capable trainers. And so we have to make sure that we spend some time training further and growing the people we have, as well as the new ones that we've got money to come in to the forces. So if you said to me, could we instantly put it up even more? Right now, I'd say, well, maybe better not just right now, but our plan is to get to the 2% of GDP by 2032 and 33. But we've also said, as part of that plan, that every 2 years we'll do a check-in to see if we can go faster or put more in there into it. And it's the DCP in those checkups, it's a floor, not a ceiling, as the Prime Minister likes to say. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. Will we do more? Well, we might have to do more. I think that Poland, as you mentioned, is probably about 5% of GDP. They have several, I mean, their history is, they know what happens if you're not prepared. They are really, have been the strongest advocates and strongest people ever when it comes to Ukraine. What they've done for the Ukrainian people is extraordinary.
So I can just follow up that money question, Minister. It always comes back to money, I know, but you referred to 2032 for when we might get to 2%. It's taken Italy and Belgium, I think, 11 years to get from the EU target of 2% to somewhere approaching that. And now we find that the next NATO meeting may be talking about a 3% target. Are we sort of climbing up a sandhill, scrambling to keep up? I mean, do you have a level of comfort that we are not going to be put under yet more pressure externally to do even more?
I need to say this very clearly. Nobody has put pressure on us. No state has. That's really important. The last thing you should ever do with a New Zealand government, particularly me, is to tell me I have to do something. They've never have, and that's it. I mean, that's really clear. So I think for many years, our ally and partners and security partners got used to New Zealand pottering along, doing some things brilliantly, like our special forces, like our engineers, like some of the air work we do, some of that, you know, some great work. But they just got used to us being what they might have thought of as happy to, freeloaders, basically happy to bludge. And so what this has done, this has actually given them this hope that we're there as a credible partner and that we get it. I've said very clearly, I mean, you may have seen on Sunday that I announced the new, that we're getting new maritime helicopters. And some dear sweet soul asked me the other day, well, what about the ones we've got now? Can we get some money for them? I thought, well, possibly. They've been extremely well maintained. They're classic. Unlike certain classic cars, classic helicopters don't always go up in value. But these were 1960s and 70s airframes. They were second-hand from Australia. Australia was dumping them, about to go in the desert. And New Zealand popped our hand up, and oh, we'll have those. The same with the Boeing 757s that take our trade delegations overseas and take a lot of our personnel overseas. They're 32 years old. They were 10 years old when they were bought after a hard life on commercial flights. This country has to stop buying cheap because it's all we've got, because we've only got X amount of money to a defence. It's a false economy. We do need to actually get the right equipment for our people and not have to spend the entire time cannibalising, as we have with the maritime helicopters. Out of our 8 helicopters, 5 work. What's happened to the other 3? Well, they're cannibalised for parts. Our Hercules, until the new ones came last year, we got down to 1 working. You know, they're 65 years old. 1 we had to send into the Antarctic in the middle of a winter with the pilot and crew wearing night vision goggles to fly into Antarctica in the middle of a winter to save someone who'd been injured. And that's 65 years old. Do you think I thought about the risk? I certainly did. Do you think that's okay? I don't think it's okay when we've got the opportunity to do better. The Hercules, thank you, now have been replaced. I want to thank Ron Mark for that. Well done. But, you know, we can't keep doing this to our people. We actually have to do better. So, yeah, I'm very happy with what I've got for them. And I guess I do want to get more.
Thank you. One quick question, Joshua, and then we'll call on Lawrence.
Thank you very much, Minister. Joshua Patterson, third-year student here at Victoria University. I noticed tonight that you've talked about our engaging with our international partners, collaboration through our DCP. But what I'm really curious is how the DCP impacts us here in New Zealand, such as improving the defence response to emergency management situations, as it has shown increasingly since Cyclone Gabrielle.
Well, you're quite right. Cyclone Gabrielle came along, and did anyone ask me to go and help clean up? Save people? No. You? No. They asked our Defence Force to do it. So this capability plan, and this is what we've announced the other day, was only just the first bit of it. There's a lot more to come. Means that our people are actually going to be able to get to places faster, better, more safely, better communications. That is going to be crucial. So not only for New Zealand, but also for the Pacific. Well, I didn't mention, I mentioned our enormous exclusive economic zone, which is the 9th largest in the world. But actually our search and rescue area zone is the 4th largest in the world. So when you're stuck on your kayak in the middle of the Tasman, which I don't suggest anyone does, who are you going to call? You're going to call New Zealand Defence Force. We often hear of search and rescue, people lost in bush, you know, all these sorts of things, tragedies on mountains. Who do we send? We send the Defence Force. They are actually not only defending us against anything else that might be happening, but very much against climatic and other conditions and dealing with it. That's who we need. So we need them both at home and out where. But, you know, the 4th largest search and rescue area in the world is a maritime nation. Do we need these maritime helicopters? Oh, yes, we do. Somebody said to me the other day, what about the drones? Can't you send those? I said, oh, yes. So you're stuck on your kayak in the Tasman Sea and a drone comes over. What are you going to do? What, is it going to witch itself down, grab you, put you in a thing because you're all, you know, cold and wet and sick and dying? No, you actually need somebody. Somebody comes out and, you know, is doing some people smuggling across the place or something. What are you going to do? Send the drone? Yep. What can you do with it? Surveil it and bomb it. Is that really what you want to do? Or do you want people to go in there and take that ship over? And that's the sort of stuff. So you need both.
Thank you, Minister. Oh, you have a
We can
question
have one
online.
more. Why don't we have one more? Yeah.
We've got a question from our online participants. Thank you, Minister, for the speech. It's a question on behalf of Stuart. Will there be any assistance from the government to boost defence industry in New Zealand?
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you so much. So the best way of doing that, Stuart, and everyone else, is for us to buy some local. Now, we're not going to build tanks here, okay? We're possibly not going to build great big aircraft and things, but there are certain things that we can build, and particularly in the uncrewed space area, I should say space. I'm trying not to use that word because it's straight in the other area, but you know what I mean. It's like we have some fabulous tech in this country, and quite a few of our rather often quite small businesses are selling into other countries. We'd like them to sell to us, and they want to sell to us. So I'm speaking on Friday, I think it is, is this right? Yes, it's Friday. See, they will start to merge after a while, to defence, on defence and to the industry, because this country has some unbelievably good engineers and technicians, some of whom have come out of defence and they're in private sector now. Why wouldn't we want to help them grow their businesses, but also have our work with them so that they're not just going out inventing something or developing something, that they're actually working with defence to do that so that they know what we want and that we can see if it works. So yeah, we're pretty keen to have procurement at home as much as we can. Having said that, we already have 800 suppliers into the New Zealand Defence Force, and quite a lot of those are local.
Minister, thank you very much. I know that many others would like to ask questions as well, but I'm conscious of your other commitments this evening. I'm going to now call upon His Excellency Lawrence Meredith, the Ambassador for the EU, to make some concluding remarks and propose a vote of thanks. I have already indicated that we need to thank him too, because he's providing the drinks. But in the meantime, Lawrence, the floor is yours.
James, Minister, Your Excellencies, dear friends, thank you very much. It's an honour to be up here to have this opportunity to say a couple of remarks and above all to give a vote of thanks to the Minister. I hate being in the position as an Irishman standing between anybody and the bar. That's an awful position to be in. So I'll keep it mercifully short. The first thing I want to say is a tribute, James, to you, Hamish, and everybody on the side of New Zealand Institute of International Affairs, the internet. As the Minister has very eloquently said, the first thing you need to do in your own defense is to raise awareness in the public of why this is so important. And I think to have a forum like NZIIA, I've been really impressed in my 15 months here in this country that you do this here in Wellington, you do it up and down the country. And I think it's so fundamental that people have the opportunity to debate issues. And I can't imagine of anybody they'd rather have for the annual lecture than somebody who expresses their views always clearly, always cogently. Minister Collins, thank you very much for this incredibly clear and comprehensive oversight. I said I'd say a couple of words of remarks. I mean, the first thing is this point about the importance of public diplomacy, because the first step in your own defense is to raise awareness among the public, and you've just done that fantastically well. You've also said that in today's changing realities, there's concern. So that's why it's important to get out there and debate the issues and make the case why it's important to spend more on defense. This is something we're doing in the European Union. Also, we've just announced, President von der Leyen just announced a massive program of Rearm Europe, 800 billion euros. So I just want to underline that on the side of the European Union, We're a trusted partner. We're a like-minded partner. We see these changing realities the same way as you've just eloquently said, that there's a need to respond, ladies and gentlemen, to the changing realities. And the first step in that is to secure your own defense. And to do that, yes, you need to spend money. You don't get out for note. I'm an Irishman, but also a Yorkshireman. So you don't get out for note. So if you really believe in your own defense, you need to spend on it. And that's what this government clearly committed to doing. That's what we're committed to doing in the European Union. And that means you need to take responsibility. The Defense Capability Plan sets a clear strategic goal. This is something we're also doing in the European Union. And it says we need innovation in the defense industries. And again, this is something we're looking at. And the great news is we have this fantastic program called Horizon Europe, the world's largest research cooperation, New Zealand, the first global partner. And breaking news, before we could only work in certain public calls, now we can walk across all the board. And that's efforts that you made, Minister, in your other capacity in research and science as well. So for all of those reasons, and you've underlined that it's really important, first to secure your own strategic autonomy, but then to have partnerships with like-minded, like Australia, like many others, like the European Union member states. So, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude that. I think we all agree that was a fantastic and magisterial tour d'horizon. Honourable Judith Collins, Minister of Defence, Space, and many other things. Thank you very much.
So please join us out in the foyer for another drink.
The best news from an Irishman is the bar's open.
Have you got time for a drink?